The camera is already rolling on the signature thriller night sequence, fog hanging low over the street, lights burning hot against the darkness. The dancers move in tight, practiced unison, bodies snapping and dragging like something not quite alive. Then one of them misses a step. At first it looks minor, just a stumble, but the rhythm keeps going and suddenly he is no longer dancing at all. He drops hard onto the pavement, face painted gray and green, eyes glassy, chest heaving in shallow bursts. For half a second, nobody reacts. The assistant director leans toward the monitor and whispers sharply, "Keep rolling. We can use the take." The band keeps playing. A few dancers glance down but are trained not to break formation. The fallen dancer tries to push himself up and fails, fingers scraping against the asphalt. Someone at the edge of the set mutters that the permits expire at dawn, that the budget is already bleeding, that stopping now would be a disaster. A studio representative steps forward, voice tight but controlled, reminding everyone that this night has no margin left. The street is rented, the crew is on the clock, and every delay risks shutting the whole thing down. He says it like a warning and like an order. Michael has been watching without moving. His face is calm, almost unreadable, but his eyes never leave the dancer on the ground, now audibly gasping, breath catching in a way that makes nearby crew members uneasy. Michael lifts one gloved hand, slow and deliberate, palm out. "Cut it. Right now." The music falters. The camera operator hesitates, then lowers the lens. The fog machines hiss on uselessly. The set drops into an unnatural quiet, broken only by the dancers' breathing. Heads turn toward Michael, then toward the director, then toward the studio rep, who steps in immediately. "You cannot do that," he says, keeping his voice low but firm. "This is not how this works." Michael does not raise his voice or explain himself. He looks past the rep and back at the dancer, then at the director, waiting. The silence stretches, thick enough to feel. Around them, hundreds of people stand frozen in costume and makeup, aware that something important has just shifted and unsure who is about to pay for it. Somewhere behind the lights, someone whispers that if filming stops now, it may not start again. Michael keeps his hand raised, eyes steady, as the consequences of that decision begin to close in. To understand why stopping mattered, you have to understand what thriller was in that moment. It was not just a music video. It was a financial gamble so large it made executives nervous, a creative risk that could either crown Michael Jackson as untouchable or confirm every quiet doubt about excess and ego. The shoot was already deep into the night, running on thin sleep and thinner patience. Coffee cups stacked up near monitors. Makeup teams worked with shaking hands. Everyone knew that if this night went wrong, the damage would not be invisible. The street itself was part of the problem. It was crowded, rented, and fragile. Neighbors were already irritated by the noise. Police permits had a hard cutoff. Union rules ticked forward like a metronome, each minute edging closer to penalties nobody wanted to pay. The crew felt boxed in by time, by money, by the fear that stopping meant losing everything they had already captured. That pressure hummed through the air even before the dancer hit the ground. Michael was not just the star of the production. He was the engine that made it possible. The choreography existed because of him. The budget existed because of him. The crowd control outside existed because his name was attached to the project. That gave him power, but it also made him the easiest target when something threatened to go wrong. Everyone knew it, even if nobody said it out loud. The first wave of pressure came fast and sounded reasonable. A producer leaned in and said the dancer was probably just dehydrated. Someone else pointed out that replacements were standing by. Another voice suggested Michael step aside while they adjusted the formation, keep the momentum going, protect the night. It was framed as efficiency, not cruelty. Then the tone shifted. The studio representative stepped closer, lowering his voice as if that made the words less sharp. He warned Michael that stopping the shoot created liability. Reports would be written. Questions would be asked. If this became an incident instead of a moment, the responsibility would land squarely on Michael's shoulders. Careers could feel that kind of weight. Around them, the set waited. The dancer was still on the ground, and the exits that had seemed plentiful an hour earlier were quietly disappearing. They try again, then again, each time changing the shape of the argument, but tightening it all the same. The first attempt comes wrapped in concern. A producer crouches beside Michael and speaks softly, almost kindly, saying they will handle it from here. Medical will take a look. The dancer will be replaced. Michael can stay on camera, stay focused, protect the night. It is presented as mercy with an exit, a way to care without disruption. Michael listens, nods once, and does not move. The second attempt drops the softness. The production manager pulls him aside and gestures toward the street, where people are gathering behind barricades and police radios crackle. The night is collapsing, he says. The neighborhood is restless. Union overtime is minutes away from triggering penalties that will ripple through the entire crew. This is no longer about one dancer, he insists. It is about hundreds of jobs and a production that may never recover. Michael hears him out, eyes calm, hands folded, as if storing every word. Then the studio representative steps in for the third time, and this one is meant to end the conversation. He talks about insurance. He explains how an ambulance on set creates a report, how a report invites scrutiny, and how scrutiny shuts everything down. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. The implication hangs heavy in the air. If Michael insists on this, the project dies, and the blame will be clean and easy to assign. Michael smiles faintly and says something light, almost playful, about how this is turning into a very serious dance rehearsal. It draws a nervous laugh from no one. The line buys no safety and no agreement. It only signals that he has decided. Without asking permission, Michael turns and walks away from the lights toward the dancer's trailer. A few people follow at a distance, unsure whether to stop him or let him go. Inside, the air smells of sweat and makeup remover. The dancer is slumped on a chair, costume half unzipped, skin clammy, eyes unfocused in a way that makes the room feel smaller. His breathing is worse now, shallow and uneven. Michael's face changes. The comm cracks, just enough. "Give me a phone now." Minutes turn into a threat all their own. Dawn creeps closer, thinning the darkness that the entire sequence depends on, and everyone on set feels the clock pressing against their ribs. The dancers remain in full makeup, prosthetics itching, muscles cooling in ways that invite injury. No one is allowed to sit. No one is told what is happening. The street outside begins to feel restless, voices rising, headlights slowing. The location starting to draw attention the way a fire does. Then someone realizes Michael is gone. Not storming off. Not arguing. Just gone. One moment he is near the trailers. The next he has vanished into the night with a single security guard and a production assistant who looks like she can barely keep up. Phones start coming out. Walkie-talkies crackle with half questions and no answers. The producer moves fast, clapping his hands, telling people to hold positions, promising updates he does not have. The director flips through shot lists, desperately trying to rearrange angles that do not require the star, knowing full well most of them do. The studio representative stops pretending. He lowers his voice and starts whispering about pulling the plug, about how long they can legally hold a crew without shooting, about how this night is slipping beyond salvage. The word shutdown floats through the air, quiet but lethal. Nobody argues back, because nobody knows where Michael is or when he will return. Off-site, far from the lights and cameras, Michael is not talking about coverage or choreography. He is on the phone, voice-controlled but urgent, asking questions about symptoms, transport times, and who can be trusted to show up fast without creating a scene. Another call follows, then another, conversations that end with promises and numbers spoken carefully. Money moves quietly when it has to. So do favors. Back on set, tension sharpens into something closer to panic. An assistant jogs from the trailers toward the monitors, eyes wide, breath uneven. She grabs the producer's arm and says Michael is coming back. The producer asks when, already bracing for the worst. Now, she says. Then she adds the part that makes the studio rep stop mid-sentence. He is not coming alone. Michael comes back quietly, without announcement, and for a second it looks like nothing has changed. Then people notice the ambulance staged just out of sight, tucked far enough away to avoid panic, but close enough to matter. A union medic steps onto the edge of the set, credentials visible, calm and prepared. Michael walks straight to the center of it all and delivers a single line, steady and controlled, without heat or drama. No more rolling until he is safely moving. The studio representative immediately starts to object, already reaching for policy and procedure, but Michael does not let the argument find traction. He does not raise his voice or threaten anyone. Instead, he reframes the night. He outlines a solution so practical it disarms the room. They will rewrite on the fly. Wide shots get a stand-in. Close-ups can be cheated or redone later. Coverage tightens. The schedule bends, but it does not break. He makes it clear that he will personally carry the burden if it means the dancer does not. Then he does the part nobody saw coming. In front of the producer, the director, the medic, and the studio rep, Michael states that the dancer's pay is guaranteed in full. His credit stays intact. Hospital care is covered. No questions, no delays. It is not framed as charity. It is stated like a fact, clean and official, something that will exist on paper and in memory. Witnesses exchange looks. The math of the night shifts. The set exhales all at once. The studio representative hesitates, scans the faces around him, and realizes there is no room left to push. The argument collapses without a fight. The medic moves in. The dancer is lifted carefully, gently, rushed out through a side corridor that keeps cameras and rumors at bay. For the first time since the fall, there is motion that feels like progress. Michael does not follow. He stays, steps back into position, and finishes the night. The cameras roll again. The choreography adapts. The sequence survives. When dawn finally breaks, the project is still alive. Later, when word reaches Quincy Jones, people close enough to hear say he does not talk about budgets or footage. He says Michael did the only thing that mattered. The video lived. And so did the person inside the makeup. By morning, the story is already changing shape. It moves through coffee cups and half-packed gear cases, through whispered conversations and quick phone calls made before anyone officially clocks out. Some crew members say Michael shut down the entire production for one dancer. No discussion, no compromise. Others insist the studio threatened to replace him on the spot, and he dared them to try. Each version grows sharper with every retelling, pulling him closer to myth. The truth sits somewhere in the middle, and it is less flashy and more unsettling. The shoot had been a machine designed to keep moving no matter what, and Michael had reached in and stopped it anyway. That detail makes people uncomfortable because it forces a question nobody likes to answer. How far are bodies supposed to bend before someone says enough? The dancer's condition becomes the part of the story that stays vague, not because it is unimportant, but because saying it out loud makes the whole industry look at itself too closely. The dancer is alive. That fact spreads quietly, with relief, then with awkward silence. Nobody wants to be the one to describe how close it came to going the other way. Instead, the focus drifts back to Michael, to whether what he did was brave or reckless or both. Praise and resentment travel together. Some call it leadership. Others mutter about ego and control. Both sides agree on one thing. He changed the rules for a night. Then a different kind of pressure starts to build. People in suits begin making careful calls, not to congratulate anyone, but to locate the leak. They want to know who talked, who said too much, and how far the story has traveled. Questions about liability and optics replace questions about health. If this becomes public, someone will pay for it, and nobody is eager to volunteer. The tone shifts from adrenaline to calculation. Michael does not comment. He keeps working, keeps quiet, lets the noise swirl without feeding it. That silence only adds fuel. In hallways and offices far from the set, decisions start forming, not about what happened, but about how it will be remembered, and whether the version that survives will protect the right people. Because once a story like this escapes the night it was born in, it does not belong to anyone anymore. Years later, the reason Quincy's reaction still lands is not because the word hero sounds flattering, but because it fits the logic of that night with uncomfortable precision. The set ran on fear. Fear of delays, fear of shutdowns, fear of being the one who cost everyone else their job. That fear kept things moving long after they should have stopped. Michael did not defeat it with volume or authority. He won by controlling the room so completely that compassion became the only viable option left. The legend version smooths the edges. In some tellings, Michael is a saint who halted everything without consequence. In others, he is painted as a tyrant who bent the production to his will. Both miss the point. The real version is more unsettling because it shows how power actually works. Michael did not shout anyone down. He did not threaten lawsuits or walk off set. He calmly removed every exit that allowed people to avoid doing the right thing while still giving them a way forward that protected their interests. That is what made it genius. He preserved the schedule by reshaping it. He protected the project by narrowing its focus. He protected the dancer by making care non-negotiable and by saying it out loud in front of people who mattered. Once those words were spoken, the night could not return to what it had been. The machine had been interrupted, and restarting it required different rules. Over time, the dancer fades into a footnote in most retellings. Names get lost. Details blur. That is how these stories usually go. But the people who were there do not forget the pause. They remember the moment when the noise stopped, the lights stayed on, and everyone realized that professionalism had quietly been redefined in front of them. Not by policy, by choice. Quincy understood that immediately. He knew how rare it was to see someone with that much to lose refuse the easy path. Calling Michael a hero was not about sentiment. It was recognition. The project survived. The industry kept spinning. But for one night, the balance tipped just enough to prove that care and control did not have to be opposites. That is why the story still matters. Not because of the music or the makeup or the myth that followed, but because it exposed a simple truth. Power does not belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who can stop everything, change the terms, and still keep everyone moving forward.